What's up, guys? You're watching Bobsdecline. Today's quick tip for you by special request. We're going to be taking a look at refusing cutouts. So I've done a few videos now where I talk about cutouts, but today we're going to be specifically looking at refusing the cutout door. We're going to have a few pointers to look out for along the way. This idea comes from the Bruce's family in the Philippines, who specifically requested a little bit more information on refusing cutout doors. So shout out to you and your 7-year-old son, Royce. Thanks for watching. One of the most important things to remember is there's a ton of different makes and models of cutouts out there. You can't start mixing and matching doors. Now, a lot of them are universal and interchangeable, but over the years, there's a ton of different types of doors. They also have different voltage and current ratings. Not only the fuse itself has a very specific current rating, but the door itself. This particular one is rated for a maximum of 100 amps. That being said, if you're ever working on the line and you've got to upgrade the fuse size above 100 amps, you must use a door that's properly rated for 200 amps. This specific type of door, chance again, is interchangeable with the 100 amp door. The 200 amp door is physically designed to be able to handle much more amperage. You can see here on the front of the door where it specifies that the door is rated for 200 amps. And of course, it is much larger in size than the 100 amp door. We're going to be looking at that a little bit closer here in a few minutes. So just watch out when you're grabbing a new fuse, when you open that package up. A lot of times the top of it comes unscrewed and it's loose in the bottom of the package. So you don't want to lose that washer and that top piece. Now, there are some types of cutout doors that don't actually use this piece in the top, so there will be circumstances in which you dispose of this. Okay guys, so we have our cutout door here, theoretically with a blown fuse. One of the first things you're going to want to check is to make sure that you can see daylight through the tube. Sometimes when they blow, it'll be full of all kinds of debris inside there. If that's the case, you can take a piece of rigid wire, simply clean it out, sometimes give it a little bang, the stuff will fall out, or of course, grab a new one. We have our new fuse. You'll want to make sure that's not loose. Give it a snug, hand tight is fine. I'm going to give that a little pull, straighten her out. Makes it a little easier to thread through the door. Once you see it on the other end, give it a little pull. You want to make sure that that's fully seated on the top. That's what's going to be carrying the current through the fuse. Screw the cap on. A good hand tight snug is plenty enough. I've never had any issues with that. On some of the higher amperage fuses, it's a good idea to take a wrench, give that a little snug. When you activate the spring, seat that in the center, you go around the nut. You'll hear some guys say not to pull this too tight. Now I'm going to show you a reason for that in a minute. It's not really a big deal, but something to keep in mind. So we're going to loosen that up just a little bit. Some of the guys mentioned if you push down with your thumb against the spring here, tighten it up, it'll leave enough slack in the fuse tail. So we're going to snug this up with a wrench or even pliers. You don't want this real tight. Just with my 2 fingers, that's plenty tight enough. We're going to cut off any excess slack as close as we can. You don't want the tail of that fuse getting caught on the little hangers there. And that's pretty much it. We hang our door, close it in, time to go home. Alright, so a minute ago I mentioned to keep this bit of slack in the fuse. The reason for that is the actual fuse link is not even close to this size. I'll show you what I mean. So this right here is your fuse. It's tiny. It's got a little crimp inside there that's holding that together. And then there's a little tiny piece of solder holding it on the inside in here. So if you've got a ton of pressure on that, and there's even the slightest manufacturer's defect in that attachment point, it'll simply pull apart. Sometimes you'll show up to a no power call, cutout doors hanging upside down. When you see the fuse blown, you'll still see that little tiny wire intact. If that's the case, it's a good chance that fuse just pulled apart and caused the outage, where you can simply refuse, close it back in, away you go. So here we've got a 200 amp cutout door. it fits into the same cutout. So the smaller door will accept a 100 amp fuse. Anything above that, you will have to use a 200 amp door. Now this particular model has an arc shortening rod. There are 100 amp cutout doors that have this as well. If you remove your cap and you see something like this, don't panic. All you got to do to refuse it, simply remove the top of your fuse. That's going to screw in there. Make sure it's snug. Again, simply thread it through the 200 amp door. Set your spring. Tighten that up. And away you go. One thing I do recommend with the 200 amp cutout doors, this top piece here, I usually do take my wrench and give it just a tiny little snug. Reason being, I've come across a ton of 200 amp doors using a thermocam where this connection, this area right here was showing hot. That's a ton of amperage going through that at 7200 volts. We do want to make sure it makes a good connection. So how do we know which size fuse to use when refusing a cutout door? Our system here is 7.2 kV single phase to ground. So on our transformers, we simply divide the kilowatt number by 5. Pretty easy. 25 kilowatt transformer, or kVA I should say. Divide that by 5, you get a 5 amp fuse. 50 kVA transformer, divide that by 5, you get a 10 amp fuse. Pretty simple. Depending on where you are geographically, many primary systems run at different voltages. So you do want to check the specs for fusing for your particular area, as well as for side lines, spur lines, whatever you call them. They are typically engineered into the system's diagram. If you find yourself in unfamiliar territory where you're not sure which size fuse to use, simply take the old cutout door, even though the fuse is blown, unscrew the top, take a look at the top of the fuse, grab an apprentice on the crew that still has good eyesight, and you should be able to see the fuse size etched into the top of the fuse link. This one here being a 6 amp fuse. Right on, guys. Thanks for watching another one of my videos. Make sure you subscribe. Click on that little bell thingy. That way you get notification whenever I post something new. I don't have a real solid schedule of when I post. When I get a chance to make a video, I throw something together, post it online. Hope you guys like it. We'll see you next time.